This is the Couch tomb. It's the only remaining, at least something visible like we could see with our eyes, left over from the city cemetery days. For people that don't know, we're in Lincoln Park right now. Lincoln Park, and where the Lincoln Park Zoo sits right now, this at one time was the original city cemetery for Chicago. From about 1843 up until the 1860s, this was the primary burial ground for the dead in Chicago. Eventually being closed due to bad sanitary conditions, because this was all marshland. Caskets were buried near those marshland. When we'd get high tide, those caskets would wash ashore. They'd also decontaminate the drinking water, causing several cholera outbreaks. So eventually that's why this was closed as a cemetery. This is the only visible tomb you can see left from those days. In the winter of the year 1857, while this man was on vacation in Cuba, a wealthy businessman from here in Chicago named Ira Couch dies. And if you could imagine going on your vacation and dying, that's what happened to poor Ira. Ira and his brother James owned one of the nicest hotels in Chicago at the time frame. It was called the Tremont House Hotel. It sat in the theater district, right on the corner of Lake and Dearborn Streets. That is still the theater district of Chicago today. Their hotel was a favorite hotel for Abraham Lincoln to stay in. Actually, Abraham Lincoln gives a version of his Emancipation Proclamation speech from the balcony of this family's hotel. But also listed as having stayed in this family's hotel is a man named John Wilkes Booth. But that's another story for another day. After Ira dies, his body is brought back up here for the wake and funeral. It's then held in a temporary holding vault here in the city cemetery until this can be built. His brother James has this commissioned to be built 1 year later in 1858 at a cost of $7,000. Which in 1858, that's a lot of money. To put it in perspective, they were building houses in the city in 1858 for less than they built this building. It's imported limestone, came from Lockport, New York. It was brought by horses. A lot of mystery, though, surrounds this mausoleum to this day. The first mystery is we have no idea why it was left here. It's never really clearly explained or stated anywhere why they left it here. There were other mausoleums at one point. You don't see any of those left. Now, this does survive the Great Chicago Fire, possibly a good reason why they could have left it here. There were estimates in the 1890s that this thing could have cost up to $3,000 to move, so maybe it was just cheaper to keep it here. The Couch family being kind of prominent at the time, maybe they didn't want this thing moved, could have threatened to sue the city, so again, they just left it here. Or maybe they just left it here to remind future generations like us what this land was once used for. But we really don't know. The other mystery is we have no idea if anything remains inside this thing. It has not been open, at least nowhere where we can find since like the early 1900s. And there was a man who went inside it when the park opened it to do some work around it. There were some articles in the newspaper saying that when this guy went inside there, he claimed he saw nothing in there. Like it was completely empty. But Ira Couch's grandson saw those articles and he came back and said, no, the guy's wrong. The grandson names about 7 that should be buried inside here, including Ira and Ira's wife, Ira's parents, 2 of his brothers that died young. The 7th person he named was some unknown woman who died in their Tremont House Hotel. And if that doesn't sound mysterious enough, what makes it even more mysterious is most of the names that the grandson mentions as being buried inside here also have headstones up in the Couch family plot in Rose Hill Cemetery on the north side, including Ira Couch, who has a headstone there. But furthering the mystery, Ira Couch and his wife are not listed anywhere in Rose Hill's records. So we really have no idea where they are. They could be here, they could be there, just don't know. Now, some of your earliest ghost stories from Lincoln Park centered right around this mausoleum. As early as the 1880s, newspapers were reporting a local urban legend that was going around the neighborhood. This legend stated that if you came to this mausoleum at the stroke of midnight, any night of the week, faced it, looking up at the name, say the phrase 3 times, the graves belong to the dead, not the living, then the door is going to open up and this big white ghost is going to come out and greet you. Because also in the 1880s, they were reporting, a lot of people were reporting seeing a big white ghostly figure around this thing.